Evening and welcome. It is the one, the only, All For United. We are back, and chaps, it's the last time we are going to sit and look back over the, depends what you want to call it. Some people might call it a roller coaster. Some people might call it a train wreck. Some might call it an absolute paradise, akin only to that, of the type you would find on the sunny beaches of Barbados. It all depends on your sunny thinking. We all know that Twilumber, when he gets in the chat, will definitely be choosing the Barbados idea, because he's always got a sunny disposition and looks at the positive in everything. So I can't wait. It's going to be absolutely brilliant. It's going to be a great show. As you can see, we have assembled once again a little group of the merry band of helpers, specifically chosen for today's show. And we have got, just below me, we brought him in, what was it, a couple of days ago? What did we do? Remind me again. We did the award show. That's it. We did the end of season awards show. And he's here again. It's Mr. Matt Morgan. Are you okay, sir?
Yeah, very, very well. Second show in a week. Yeah, it feels like a privilege.
You see, it's lovely whilst you're all young and youthful like this. Eventually, it just becomes the way it is. Oh, sorry, I'm doing this now. It's great. Love it. I wouldn't have it any other way, that's for sure. And of course, sitting over there in the corner, we would have had him on a couple of days ago, but it would have given us 5. And as you know, we're not a massive fan of 5 in the chat if we can help it. So we thought we'd have him along today instead. So we replaced Andrew Wall with the man we call Bean. How are you doing, sir? You okay?
Oh, good, yeah. Glad to be back. Missing the football a little bit, but glad to be back and get into a bit of football chatter again.
Absolutely. And of course, well, yeah, I know. I wonder what that noise was as well, Dan. It was
That was my dog, I think.
Just like a little puppy you were then, Dan. You know, just happy to do what you're doing. You heard the little sound. It was just like, what's that? Brilliant. But yes, my right-hand man on the left-hand side, there he is, Mr. Danfield. What's up, bruv?
Have you seen Christian Eriksen's goal?
Have I seen Christian Eriksen's goal?
Yeah.
You're going to need to give me a little bit more than that. Are we talking about a goal?
He scored for Denmark against Sweden, and it's an absolute cracker.
Well, it's amazing what can happen when you play, I suppose.
Yeah. That's impressive. So, yeah, at a minute, I was in awe of that, and then I heard some weird noise, and it made me, jump like a possum. But no, I'm good.
Well, there you go then. So it's a chaotic start, as ever. What else could you have expected? So please do like and subscribe if this is the sort of stuff that you are after, because I'll tell you now, it don't get much better than this. So there we are on the show. I mean, obviously, there might be other options that you might find more exciting. If so, feel free to consume them, but just click that like button before you disappear. So the whole purpose of today is, as we say, to go back over the season, sort of some thoughts and memories. It's going to be a positive experience. It's also going to be positively depressing at times, I'm sure. But we need to do it. We need to take stock over the season and just sort of really rate whereabouts we are. On the tweet, you'll have noticed that we put out, obviously, 8th in the league, FA Cup winners, out of the Carabao Cup quite early, as well as Europe. So I suppose we just say hellos to everybody here. We've got NT, we've got Dave, we've got Andrew. He's back in the chat, just how it should be. And yes, NT, we all love the reign of terror that's Philip brings in the chat. But, honestly, genuinely, when you just see him tweeting or put his message in initially, we were sat there scratching our head down, what is this? But I miss him if he's not here, which is like a comforting sort of thing, which I quite like. So there we go. Just goes to show you don't have to agree with me. You do have to just have a little bit of something about you, and he's certainly got that. Yes, Simon, we're all doing good. And here we go. Watching a video on YouTube showing all of United's goals this season, including Martial's 2 goals. I've got to be honest, I couldn't even name the game he played in order to score those. That would be like trying to find a needle in a haystack, I think, this season. But there we go. Right, we're going to kick it off. We'll ask you, Matt, straight from the beginning. If you can take yourself back all the way to the beginning of the season, we had a wicked season opener. If I'm not mistaken, we were the Monday Night Football, which was incredibly annoying. It was one of those where we had to watch the entire Premier League kick off while we're just sitting there going, when's it our turn? We want to play. Wasn't a big fan of that weekend spreading out in the manner that it did, if I'm honest with you. I kind of think the first day should be a bit like the final day and just everybody plays so you can all get yourself into it. But that's a different thing altogether. It wasn't the best of 5 games, was it? We had a tricky win against Wolves. It was a narrow win, a defeat to Spurs, win against Forest just about, and they had a red card and all. We got an Arsenal loss. Then we go and lose to Brighton. And I suppose at this point we weren't exactly feeling great. But I wanted to stop and take pause at this checkpoint, which was the first European game of the season, because we played Bayern Munich and we lost 4-3. And although it was a defeat, despite everything that had gone on before, I saw this as a positive defeat. And what I mean by that was that the performance was there. There was a fight. You've got Bayern Munich, one of the creme de la creme of the European game. And then there was us battling. And we missed out, but it was close. And it's not always been that way. There we were, back at Europe's top table, and we were battling. At this point, and I'm sure I know what your answer is going to be, we'll ask it anyway. At this point in the season, was that feeling a little bit like, all right, do you know what? It's been a bit of a tricky start, but this could still be a good season? Because going into it, we had such a great sort of feeling around the club. We'd had a brilliant finish to last season. We were all looking forward to what this season was going to bring and how we were going to build on it. Get to that game against Bayern Munich. What was your thoughts after that defeat? Did you see that as a sort of a harbinger of things to come, or were you more positive about it like I was?
Yeah, I think there was. I think if you look back at it, also the defeat itself was disappointing. I think there was aspects of it even over the course of the 2 legs. I think even when we played them away from home, there was signs there. We didn't sort of necessarily get outplayed as such. Also, they were just obviously, it was just the quality on the day from them. I think when we were the Champions League, I think going into the season, we were all had our expectations anyway. I think after last season, people said we did overachieve, which is probably pretty accurate. With Ten Hag's first season, I think because of that, I think everyone was expecting us to sort of like cruise through the group. Obviously, we had Galatasaray and I can't think who did it because who was the team now? I can't think who the team was.
Copenhagen,
that was the one. Yeah, so we kind of expected to get through that group. Obviously, we knew Bayern Munich were probably going to finish top, or at least get through quite easily, because that's just what Bayern normally tend to do. But I think it kind of sort of set the tone. But I think so, over the course of playing Bayern, judging it off them 2 games alone, I don't think it was necessarily as bad as what we thought. But I think because of the ultimate results was going out, it kind of set the tone a little bit. But from where they were at the start of the season, because the opening game was appalling. I remember sat there watching it, and I was sat there thinking it's going to be a long, long season. If every game's going to be like this, it's going to be a hell of a season. We got to the Champions League. Yeah, we went out. I don't think we were overly disappointed. I think we disappointed ourselves more against Galatasaray and Copenhagen, if I'm quite honest, because they were the team you expected us to pick up points against. But yeah, it kind of set the tone a little bit. But I thought we might have kicked on a little bit after the Champions League, to be honest with you. Might have given us a bit of a kick up the backside, but didn't seem to be the case, unfortunately.
Okay, yeah, I think that seems reasonable. I tend to agree with the vast majority of what you said there. NT saying, again, losing to Bayern isn't necessarily the end of the world, and I think I agree with that as well. You are going to have these sorts of games, and that's what I mean. It was a good fight and a bit of a match. Yes, I think this was an interesting one. I mean, I'd said from the start, don't get rid of De Gea. I thought there were other positions we needed to worry about, but, we've done it. And yeah, there was certainly getting Onana, who had been in a Champions League final. You were thinking to yourself, it's got to go really well. But he almost single-handed, that's probably harsh to say single-handedly, but maybe single-handedly. If he used both hands, he might have saved the bloody thing. But knocked us out through some poor goalkeeping. And it took him a while to come back around. We'll get back to that. But I want to talk about your hopes, Andy. At the start of the season, what were you thinking? What at the start of the season, what did you think was successful? What did you think was going to be a good season for Manchester United, especially around that time of the Bayern game?
For me, it was always top 4 for me. I thought we did overachieve a little bit the previous season with finishing, 3rd? But I thought we'd kick on, and I thought we'd probably comfortably get 4th in the top 4. But the start of the season, like Matt said, you had the Wolves game, which was pretty terrible. Then you had the Tottenham game. I remember being fairly poor again. Then we had the Forest one where it felt like we saw a little bit of a fight. Like did we go 2-0 down? Was it 2-0? We went down very early and we saw a little bit of a fight. The Arsenal game, I thought we was very unlucky that we didn't get anything with that Garnacho offside. And then we probably should have got something against Bayern, but it felt like we were starting to kick on then. Like it felt like you could see something. Like the Wolves game was very bad, but I always put that down to at the start of the season. We'll sort this out. But yeah, I think it was just an indication of what was to come, wasn't it? I mean, the Champions League, I don't really think that tells a true reflection of what actually happened, because he was in all of the games. It was just very silly mistakes. But yeah, for me, I still thought top four at the start of the season. I still very much thought top four.
So, Beanie, Dan's laughing because it's that moment, everyone. Drum roll.
Oh, is it?
I don't know if you've gone all the way to the beginning of this show, Toolember, or if you just dipped in. But if I was you, I'd pop back, go and have a look at what's. We'll still be here. You can come back and say what you're saying. But we said nice things about you, and as I said, very cheery disposition immediately and positive from the second he walks in. But I'm just pleased you're here. But that's day made. Good stuff. So, yeah, fair points there, Andy. I think we were all sat there thinking it would be okay and that it would be a good season. Dan, Simon mentions a good point here, talking about I hope they would have a new buyer. It comes from the Arabs, obviously. We're talking about people from Saudi or the Qatari bid specifically that was being mentioned there. I think we were all positive at that point, weren't we? We really did enter the season positively. What was success looking like for you?
I think our prediction is to finish fourth, and I think that would have been a fair reflection of progress from last season. We definitely overachieved last season, so a lot of people were talking, we could push a title challenge, and that was just unrealistic for me. There's far too much gone on behind the scenes at the club and just with the club in general that it was never really going to happen, and it's probably not going to happen for a few years if you're realistic. For me, the start of the season's just, it's summed up in spells, really. I think we lost, I want to say 6 of the first 10 games, which is not really good enough. I can remember the first game I really looked at and thought we played quite well was the buying game. Even though we lost 4-3, it was down to silly individual mistakes, really. The Forest game, maybe it was 2-0 down. If Forest would have carried on doing what they were doing, they'd have beat us 5-0. But they didn't. They stopped and they stuck 11 behind the ball for some reason. And then it was the Palace 3-0, which might be wrong. You'll have to go and check. I'm sure Martial scored in that Palace 3-0 game. And we looked really, really good. And it was more of a rotated squad that we looked quite good. And then the wheels sort of fell off a little bit for me. We seemed to put decent performances in the Champions League in terms of it was constant individual errors that was costing us games, like Onana, Casemiro, Rashford being sent off maybe when he shouldn't have been sent off. There were lots of different issues. I personally don't ever feel like the Premier League got going in the first 10 games or so. We had the Arsenal game, which Ten Hag gets poked at him because he mentions it quite a lot. But he wasn't wrong. It was a weird one. We had the Brighton ball out of play, which wasn't it from Rashford. I remember we had me and Barry had a big trying to understand how that works, because then it was in for Newcastle. But we just never seemed to get going. Even thinking about it now, the Scott McTominay 2 goals was like game week 8, game week 9. And when you think about it, that was absolutely ages ago. And we never really kicked on from it. It was absolutely amazing that we managed to do it, but we never really kicked on. I think we started to struggling pretty much straight away. So for me, top 4 would have been a fair reflection of where the club's at, where Ten Hag was at. It's not really panned out that well.
It'll be interesting to see how you're feeling at the end of the season when we continue on our magical little mystery tour, which isn't really much of a mystery. You can just Google it, to be honest with you, and you'll find out what we're doing. So it's probably a rubbish idea to call it a mystery one, but there we go. That's what I've gone for, and it's what we'll stick with. But Matt, we got ourselves moving. We did have, again, it was a tricky time for us. There's no getting around it at all. And we've spoken about getting up to that buying game. We did manage to win the next game. We managed to beat Crystal Palace in the Carabao Cup, but then immediately, and it was one of those where we said, "Oh, it'll be sod's law that we go and lose the league game to them," and then we did. It's bizarre. We couldn't manage a win on top of a win. Then we had the horrible loss to Galatasaray. We had the red card as well in that game. And obviously at that point, you're then looking at both those games thinking, well, that was a really bad week again. And it's these inconsistencies where we have a good week and then a bad week.
Yeah.
A win against Brentford, a win against Sheffield United. We then defeat Copenhagen in the Champions League. And all of a sudden you think, well, that's 3 wins on the bounce. And then you play Manchester City and lose 3-0. And the worst one of those, I think, was then losing 3-0 to Newcastle. Now, I know that none of us were necessarily sitting there putting the Carabao Cup high on our list of things that we would want to win. But that loss against Newcastle, Matt, do you feel there was a bit more of a sting in that? Number one, it's our trophy to defend, and we sort of gave it up quite weakly. But number two, at this moment in time, when you talk about the rivalries of the Premier League, at the moment, that seems to be where our rivalries are. Because obviously you've always got the perennial ones. You're always going to have a big match against Arsenal, a big match against City, a big match against Liverpool because of the history that we've had over a long time. But Newcastle, we've never really had much of a rivalry with them. But with them now trying to push and having the money as well, it's almost like we're trying to have to slap them down a bit and say, you can't come in, go away. And we're like the first bit of defence from getting into that top 6. So losing that game to Newcastle, especially having beaten them in the cup final as well, did that sting a little bit because of that?
I think it was more the manner of the defeat. Like you say, the Carabao Cup's we never go into a season with that as like an expectation. We don't sit there going, "Oh, we really need to win the Carabao Cup." As a club like United, you aim higher than that. You look at the Champions Leagues, the Premier League titles, even the FA Cups. No one sort of classifies the Carabao as like a vital competition. But I think that Newcastle game in particular, I think it was the manner of the defeat. I was actually at that game. I was actually there. And was actually sat near, not right near, but not far away from the away end. And the whole game, it was the most depressing game to be at, because all you could hear was Newcastle fans from start to end was Newcastle. The stadium was completely silent. It was just an awful game to be at. I was actually considering leaving part way through. I didn't. I stuck it out because that's what you do. But yeah, it was more the manner, and the performance was absolutely appalling. And they didn't look like they didn't stand a chance. They just absolutely outplayed us from minute 1 right till the end. And it was, just appalling. And it just kind of set the tone for that start point of the season. And again, the consistency was the main issue, I think, throughout the whole season, to be honest.
Beanie, where do you come? You're right, Matt. Sorry, I didn't mean just ignore everything you just said. Absolutely not. I agree. I had no reason to disagree, so I moved on. I do that sometimes, but yeah, absolutely. But Beanie, sort of same thing to you. We've got NT saying, "Don't tell Newcastle fans we're rivals; they're itching," and there is. There's a real thing about Newcastle United at the minute where they're desperate to sort of try and mug us off and say certain things around us and around our club. I'm not for 1 second putting up there with the likes of the Arsenal City rivalries, the proper rivalries that we've had that have been over success. But certainly we're in that little group, aren't we? The chasing pack, because you've all just sat there and said it's about getting into the top 4. Well, you know that City's going to be in the top 4. You assume that Arsenal is going to be there. You expect Liverpool to be in there. So realistically, there's only one space left if you're going to get into the top 4. And that's where the rivalry comes in terms of the fact that Newcastle have made it. Villa were there this year. Yeah. Chelsea would normally be a team that you would expect to be fighting for the top 4, but they've obviously been off it for a while. And now Newcastle are jumping in with that as well. So you're looking at this little group, this little pocket of 4, 5, 6 teams that are all hoping to sort of reach the promised land. Villa got it this time, obviously, but do you see Newcastle as a bit of a rivalry? Because that defeat really annoyed me. I didn't want to lose to Newcastle just because of how gobby they've tried to be in the past. And of course, coming from Stevenage as well, we don't like Newcastle here because of how gobby they were, funnily enough. So what did you reckon about the whole Newcastle thing, and how were you feeling at that point to be out of the Carabao Cup? Did it bother you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying about us being in that little pocket now. For me, you've got like Spurs, Newcastle, like say Villa now, and it's always nice to maybe put one over on them a little bit just to put a bit of a marker down. And for me, the manner that we lost that game against Newcastle, like Matt says, for me, that's them then doing us. Do you know what I mean? That's them getting the upper hand on us then in the league and them thinking that they've maybe got one over on us. But for me, as Matt said, it's the manner of how we started losing at that point in the league. We had the Palace game after we beat them in the cup. We had our strongest team playing against them in the league, and there was nowhere in that game. It was a very comfortable win for Palace, if I remember rightly. The win for Newcastle in the cup was very comfortable, and for me, that was the point of the season that it started to set in for me that there was a pattern like happening. That performances were starting to be a bit lackluster, and you were starting to hear little rumours about is it starting to be the end of Ten Hag sort of thing. So that was the point for me where it started to get a little bit like this is going to be a real tough year.
And it's almost a prophecy that, and it's almost you knew what was to come. But Dan, just finishing off on the sort of the Newcastle chat. This is what Dave's saying here. Newcastle won't let go of Dan Ashworth. Do you think that part of this is that fact, the fact that they do see a bit of a rivalry, a bit of a problem between the two sides now? Do you think that if this had been somewhere else, like if it had been Brighton wanting Dan Ashworth or something like that, do you think we'd still be having this same battle in terms of trying to keep them? Or do you think it's just because, I mean, why? Really, I suppose it's just a better question. Why do you think they just won't let the man go? Because of all the people that you're going to keep hostage effectively, why Dan Ashworth? Like, is he really worth this level of pettiness, I suppose? And I know that they don't just want to see their staff walk away, but we're talking about admin staff, really, at the end of the day. You know, we're not talking about players on the pitch and that sort of thing. I understand them being like, we're not selling Alan Shearer, we're not selling this person, we're not selling that person. But at the end of the day, this guy, does he really matter? What do you reckon? And how much did that Newcastle defeat annoy you?
I would put it to when we lost Peter Kenyon to Chelsea, and Chelsea suddenly started buying all the players that we wanted. And if I remember, John Obi Mikel joined us and then stopped joining us and went to Chelsea because of stuff like that. So I could do understand Newcastle's frustration and why they would want to keep him. I just, at this point, they're probably doing more damage to themselves than good by not just letting him go and getting a proper replacement in. But I mean, the Newcastle rivalry has been, for me, since I was a kid because of Kevin Keegan, and he would love it if he beat us and that sort of stuff. So it's always been there. I think the most annoying thing for me about the Newcastle game was, if I might be wrong, I'll have to double check, but the starting lineup for Newcastle was a championship team. It was absolutely awful. Bar Anthony Gordon, I think, played. Everybody else were not great or young. Or I think Kraft started, Dubravka started. It was not a good team on paper, but as a team, they were miles better than we were on the night. And it sort of made me sit back and go, just how far away are we from having a good season? Because on evidence of that, we was miles away from management, playing staff, everything. We was absolutely miles away. So that was one of the most frustrating things for me in terms of the loss to Newcastle. It was just the fact that the Newcastle didn't really put out a team that you think would beat us 3-0. You thought it was one of them games where they'd lose 2-1 and they'd be happy if they put a performance up. But instead, they've gone and absolutely mullered us. And then, I don't know. I think Connor mentioned earlier, we then went on to lose to Copenhagen 4-3 a couple of games later. And it was, again, another one of them patches where I think if you take a small sample of like 5 games, we lost 3 or 5. And we got too many of them this season. Too many little indications of not being able to stay unbeaten, picking up too many losses in a short space of time. So, yeah, the Newcastle thing was frustrating more so than anything because the team that Newcastle put out was poor.
Yeah, it was a bit. And you are jumping ahead into the next part of the question, really, which was going to be about this. Connor has mentioned the 4-3 defeat to Copenhagen not long after as well. Well, this was exactly it. We went on having lost that game to Newcastle. We did get ourselves out there and actually started to play football once again. We had a little win over Fulham, which you would have expected us to do. But that game against Copenhagen, absolutely mad. You know, we looked like we'd won it, and then out of nowhere, we snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. We lose that game, a red card, obviously, as well. And we then managed to beat Luton and managed to beat Everton, then draw against Galatasaray. We lose again to Newcastle as December rolls in. We lose to Chelsea. We beat Chelsea 2-1, lose to Bournemouth 3-0. And then came that big match against Bayern Munich. And it was a huge match, Matt, this game against Bayern, because we knew that a defeat to Bayern and we weren't going to be, I think actually at that point we knew we weren't going to be in the Champions League, but we were hoping we could potentially get the Europa League. Yeah. And just lost to Bayern. And as a result, because of that, that was the end of Europe. We knew that in the next half of the season, there wasn't going to be any Europe. We finished off getting up to Christmas, obviously, with a draw against Liverpool and a loss to West Ham. And I don't know about you, I found Christmas naff. You know, we got to that point of Christmas. We're not going to go to Boxing Day yet. That's going to be the start of a rejuvenated second half of the season, part of the review. But that first half just ended so awfully. That defeat to Bayern. And I remember having the chats that we spoke about here in the All for United studio. We were talking a lot about, do we even want that? Oh, don't worry about it. At this point, injuries are starting to mount up. We know that we're struggling in the league. It's not going well. I could at least understand, to a degree, some people saying, do you know what, actually, this season, it's not going well. We're losing people. Injuries are going on. We don't have a left back. We're really struggling at this point. It makes sense to just sort of get ourselves through the season. But how annoyed were you to be out of the group stages? Because it was great to be in the Champions League, but to not even make it into the second half of the tournament where you end up in February. That, to me, like you said at the beginning, it looked like a group we could get out of. So when you're ranking the effort, so to speak, or the end product in the Champions League, how are you feeling going into Christmas? Because I mean, I won't say it ruined my Christmas, but I was certainly sat there going, I can't stand football at the minute.
Yeah, I think the disappointing thing, like I said earlier on, was more the fact that the teams around us in the group you'd expect us to qualify from. I think going into the Bayern Munich game, I think we were sort of like playing for all or nothing. It was like we just go out there and try and win it, and we somehow managed to try and qualify or even stay in the Europa League. Also, in the end, neither happened, and we ended up out of Europe completely, which was disappointing. But I think it sort of set the tone. The games prior to that in the group, we sort of made hard work of it, and we kind of put ourselves in a position come the Bayern game where we've literally give ourselves all the work to do in the space of one game against the hardest team in the group. Admittedly, we were at home, but either way, it was. I think we all knew it was unlikely going into that game. We were going to qualify for the knockouts. I think the damage was done for me. I think against like Galatasaray, Copenhagen, individual mistakes throughout them games cost us massively. Come the Bayern Munich game, I think no one was really surprised in the end that we went out of Europe completely. But it was disappointing because obviously the excitement of being back in there was ultimately what it's all about. But it's one of them. The damage was done come last group game, and it was sort of like it was all self-inflicted, unfortunately.
It was self-inflicted. It was a horrible, horrible thing. I was so pleased to be back in the Champions League. I wasn't expecting us to win it, but you did at least hope you'd get out the group stages, because then at least you've got a chance. Anything can happen in a knockout competition, as we saw later on in the year. Connor has, no pun intended there, Barry injury started to mount up. Mr. Injury himself, very good. But what I love most about the community that we're building here at All for United is that sometimes you hope in your life that you can have an impact on people. It's part of the reason I got into teaching. You want to have an impact, and you want to see, you know, the younger generation grow and develop. And what I'm really enjoying is seeing our community grow and develop in the art of the pun as well. I love it. NT's getting on the train. He's doing a great job. And there we are. Are we making a mountain out of a molehill? I love it. this sort of humour will keep me going for hours. So absolutely, if you've got the ability to whack a pun out there, you will absolutely make it onto the screen without a shadow of a doubt, because I love it. Oh, here we go. Longevity, Barry. I don't even know what I've said. Longevity, is that me? You calling me old? That's what it feels like is happening here. I'm not sure that's a pun. Thank you. So, Beanie, will come back over to you. Europe. Were you? I can't actually remember whether you were or you weren't, but were you one of those who wanted to say, you know what, forget Europe this season. We just need to concentrate on the domestic side of things and try and get to the end of the season without many more injuries? Or was there a part of you, like me, that thought, you know what, actually, I want the Europa League because it doesn't matter what team we put out, it's still a knockout competition and we've got the ability to maybe go on and win another pot?
Yeah, for me, I mean, you've got to stay in Europe, haven't you, in some capacity at that point. For me, the Champions League was just frustration was the main thing I felt after that. Just that we got ourselves in such good positions in possibly all of the games, maybe not the last one, but both of the Galatasaray games, I think. We made hard work of both of the Copenhagen games. Didn't we win one of them after Onana saved a last-minute penalty or something? Just errors and, yeah, just very frustrating, I found. I mean, it looked like a group to me that we would easily get out of. Obviously, with Bayern Munich, but I thought we had enough to get out of that group. And I think you take away the mistakes, I think we would have easily got out of the group because, as Connor said a minute ago, I thought we actually played quite well. It's just the mistakes in the Champions League for me was what cost us in the end, be it Onana, the referees with that shocking Rashford red card. But yeah, for me, I was gutted getting out of that because it kind of felt like we weren't going to be in it again for a bit. The way the season was going, it felt like we wasn't going to get in it like this season, which we obviously haven't. But yeah, that made it even worse for me that we went out the way we did. But yeah, I wanted us to stay in Europa League if we could have, but we couldn't get over the line with that one.
It was undoubtedly, I think, one of the hardest. Oh, brilliant. Thank you. I made reference to United's youth. There we go. I did. Longevity means a long life. Give the kids a chance to an extent because they will be the most hungry. Yes, absolutely. I did mention that. Well done. Thank you. I'm getting old. So it helps when people can just point out what I say a lot of stuff. And sometimes I'm just rabbiting because, believe it or not, this isn't scripted. So I say things and I forget I've said it. It's bizarre. There we go. Never mind. Dan, now you were one heavily advocating not wanting to be in Europe for the second half of the season, but there must have still been a part of you that was really hacked off that we hadn't, because we should have got through that group. We should have. The game against Munich, we had the chance there. Galatasaray, we could have won. Copenhagen, we shouldn't have lost either of those games. To lose to Copenhagen twice to me was criminal. I don't think that's acceptable.
Well, we beat them once.
Oh, no, we did win that one, though. You're right.
Yeah, I think that's the only game we won, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, to walk away with a 4-all aggregate still isn't great.
Yeah, no.
On the whole, you're right, we did. But yeah, it was Galatasaray we didn't beat both times, wasn't it? But there we go. So, talk to me about Europe. How were you feeling at the end of that? We've reached the end of the year, effectively. Christmas is coming. You're opening your presents. Were you just sort of throwing your gravy all over the place and sulking and not, just dousing yourself in pigs in blankets like I was, just trying to do anything other than worry about the fact that we've got to play Villa tomorrow and this could spoil my Christmas even more?
Yeah, the Champions League was a tough one for me because it's definitely a group we should have got out of. We was better than Bayern Munich in the first game, and obviously the game at Old Trafford, I thought Bayern Munich were shocking, really. They never really got out of second gear. We just couldn't lay a glove on them. So they weren't a team that looked fantastic, like miles better than us sort of thing. My issue, I think for me, Europe went in the Copenhagen 4-3 to be 2-0 up. And again, we can talk about the Rashford sending off a lot, but it's a poor decision, in my opinion. It's a red card. That changes the whole group stage for us. But then we don't learn from that mistake at Copenhagen where we're 2-0 up and then we don't win. And then we do the same at Galatasaray. We're 2-0 up, absolutely comfortable. Then suddenly 2 mistakes from the goalkeeper. The game's gone again. And that was just the way the season seemed to go for the first, up until Christmas. There was just too many individual mistakes. We weren't learning lessons as a team in terms of holding on to leads. That mistake was made in the Champions League countless times. We're thinking, and it would have happened again if Onana didn't save the penalty, because he saved the penalty in the 1-0. So if they scored that penalty, that would have been a game we was winning and we ended up drawing. It was just far too often. And again, if you look at December going to, I think it's something like 7 games leading up to Christmas Eve, we won 1. And it was just another period of games where you just think, is this season going to be over anytime soon? I've got to say, though, I am glad that we didn't get in Europe, because I do feel like if we had to contend with Thursday, so I know you still play every so many days, but Thursday, Sunday, and an FA Cup run, I don't think we would have got to the FA Cup final. So I am happy that we ended up going out bottom, because I think with the injury crisis and everything else, it would have really took its toll on the squad. But having said that, we should have got out of the group in second anyway. So it's disappointing either way. But yeah, it's just it was a tough run up to Christmas, to be honest.
It genuinely was. It really was tricky. And, you know, the interesting thing was that then around came Boxing Day. And Boxing Day for me was a really, really big day, because I was sat there with my brother-in-law. Now, my brother-in-law, God bless him, he loves football. He loves Manchester United, but he is without doubt one of the... If I was to make my brother-in-law one of the people in our chat that we see regularly, it would be Twilumber. That very little pleases him, if I'm being brutally honest. Like, very little. No matter what it is, he's got something negative to say. It's one of those. And it's so frustrating. And at 2-0 down, he's effing and jeffing, and he's got all of this. And I'm sat there at half time going, but it's not over yet. It's not until that final whistle's gone. I've seen too much Manchester United to just sit here at half time and go, that's it, it's over. So I'm going to keep watching for 45 minutes, because that's what we do. We're fans. And ultimately, if we get to full time, I'll join you, and we can go and kick the cat or whatever. We don't kick the cat, just so you know. But it's one of those. But that game against Aston Villa was seismic, because we scored one, we scored a second one, we scored a third one, and he went off to go and kick a cat because he didn't like the fact that I was right and that we shouldn't have given up. But it's one of those. It was a brilliant game, and we had a superb win. And again, you sit there and hope that that is going to be the thing that thrusts us forward into having a better second half of the season. And of course, immediately from that, just before New Year's Eve, we lose to Nottingham Forest. Naturally, the FA Cup comes round. We beat Wigan. Brilliant. Draw with Tottenham. The FA Cup comes back round again. Newport County. We survive a little scare against them. As has been mentioned by our good friend. Where was he? He mentioned it. I thought I starred it. I did. Yes, Dave, saying that even Newport and Coventry made us look like a championship team at times. And it's one of those where, again, we've got the win, and then we beat Wolves, and then we beat West Ham, and then we beat Aston Villa, and then we beat Luton Town. And actually, we're in a situation there where we've then had 5 games without a loss. 5 wins on the trot, and 7 games without a loss. And you start thinking to yourself, well, do you know what? Actually, maybe this is the one. We've hit February now. This is it. Now we can have a little bit of a run. We've got a chance to get into the top 4. And then, of course, we lose to Fulham. Then we get the FA Cup again and play Nottingham Forest, and we managed to get a win against them, which was really good news for us, obviously, looking at where we were. But we then go and lose to Manchester City before beating Everton. That was just our period all throughout the season, wasn't it, Matt? It didn't matter what was going on. You could never look at a result and go, well, that's it, we should kick on from that, because that was what our shows were. Like, literally one week it would be, surely we can kick on from this, and the next week it's like, why didn't we kick on from this? Surely we can kick on from this one. Yeah. Why didn't we? And it just felt like that. But that was our best period of the season, I think, because like I say, we had that little purple patch, and at that point it did look like we were starting to pull it around. Now, obviously, that's about to lead up to the Liverpool game, but just give us your general thought over the consistency of the season, because that was really tricky, wasn't it? And again, the fact that we had Newport and Forest and only just got through these FA Cup games.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about the Liverpool game. We talk a lot about the Coventry game. We talk a hell of a lot about the Man City final. But we made hard work of it before we got there.
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, consistency was, I think, the problem throughout the whole season, not even just before Christmas. Because I think even looking at the Villa game on Boxing Day, you sort of sat there first half at half time thinking we're sort of kind of where we left off before Christmas. Also, the second half was a completely different story. Probably one of the best second half performances I've probably seen for a while. But yeah, again, the consistency was a major part. You sort of went into every game not knowing what to expect from the team. 1 week you can get a great result, then they play the following week, and then you're like, oh, we're back to square one again. And it was sort of like the up and down throughout the whole season. Also, then they went on and won 5 games on the bounce, and you sort of thought maybe there's something about them. Obviously, winning 5 on the bounce, you look at it and go, brilliant. But then sort of dip back into the win a game, draw a game, dropping points here and there, and it was just all very, very bitty and very scrappy throughout large parts of the season, if not all the season. But I think consistency is where they definitely need to work on for next season, 100%.
Absolutely. And I mean, taking that same conversation point there, Beanie, but getting to this point, I mean, Connor said when we beat Villa at Christmas, I thought we'd get in top 4. Like that whole point, again, that little period, that little 2-month period, although there was a couple of blips, it did look like we were starting to get back onto, not steamroller in the opposition, but we were certainly in a position where we had a right to be thinking, do you know what? Probably we'll make top 4 now. We'll sneak ourselves in there. We'll be that 4th team without too much of a problem. And actually, we can just go about our business and that will do for this season. Maybe win a cup, we're sitting there and saying. Little know how important that maybe was going to end up being. But this was true, wasn't it? Even at that point, I mean, even until later on in the season, to be fair, that there was a lot of opportunity for top 4. When did you give up? Did you give up by this point for top 4? Or had you reached the point of thinking, do you know what, the consistency is so poor at the moment that actually we're probably not going to make top 4 because every time we look like we're getting there, we drop again. And so for that reason, other teams are going to have a consistent run. Someone will, and we won't be that team. Where were you stood in terms of the consistency and that?
Well, it's the hope that kills you, isn't it? I mean, we get ourselves to a point where you hope, can we get top 4? But for me, I think that Villa game, am I right in thinking that started Rasmus off in it with his little run? And we looked a lot more threatening. Like Garnacho was getting goals, the forward line looked a lot more threatening. And you could sort of see little seeds of like promise there. And for me, it kind of ended when Rasmus got injured because we looked very flat again going forward. We looked like we missed him a lot. I can't remember what game it was that he got injured or what he missed. But yeah, for me, that kind of ended there, the top 4, because we just looked toothless going forward without him, I thought. Because he was in such good form. I thought we missed him massively. But I agree 100% with what Matt says. I think the consistency is just a theme throughout the season for me. We played well one game and then you wouldn't know what you were going to get. It's probably the most frustrating from me being a United fan I think I've ever experienced being a United fan this season, because you've never known what you're going to get. You never know what performance you're going to get, and Ten Hag must be seeing that as well. Must be very frustrating from his point of view. However much part of it may be his issue, it must be very frustrating that he doesn't know what he's going to get from the team each week either.
No, it must be. And again, it was so easy. People were talking about the pressure on Ten Hag. Who was it who just mentioned it? It was, here we go, Simon, saying that the pressure going to Ten Hag too, whether we still have a job with each defeat we suffered or draws, dropped points. And actually that started to build. And it was a bit of a shock, I think. I mean, we'll get to that as we get to the last part of the season, but there was a lot of pressure on Ten Hag, which was just bizarre in a way, because when you consider how well we'd done the season before and we had all of our players available, everybody was so positive about it. So Dan, with regards to that period, do you look at this at all? Twillen was saying the amount of injuries caught Ten Hag off guard and therefore he didn't have a plan B. Simon talking about us having 45 injuries. I thought I saw more than that. I thought Chelsea, I don't know if that's just the Premier League one. I think he got it from the BBC, but there was 60 something for us and Chelsea was still just above us on that one. But we were down to a skeleton back 4 effectively. There were times when we had to play Casemiro eventually at centre back. proving that. So we had a lot of dramas with regards to injuries. Do you put much stock into that? Because, I'm sure Twillham is going to pop up in a minute and go, oh, it's all excuses. But it's true. We had one of the highest amounts of injuries that we have ever had, to the point that we're off now to try and steal Arsenal's physio, by the sounds of things, because we know that it needs to be better. Do you think the injuries is a reasonable enough argument for the inconsistency that we've had, and the fact that last season you were still saying you needed to rotate, but we did well, and this season we did rotate because we didn't have a choice, and we didn't necessarily do as well?
It's a difficult one, because if you look at the run up to Christmas, the results they're all over the place. It's really inconsistent. But when we go to the run between sort of December the 26th and March, when it was a skeleton back four with Maguire, Lindelof, Varane, and that they were patching, we were doing well. We won 8 of 10. The team looked steady. He was bringing players in. We had Reguilon. I think Reguilon was playing some games in that time as well. And he ended up getting sent back for some strange apparent reason. That didn't work out well for Ten Hag at all. I think, and this is the sort of thing that's cost us this season. And it's not just Ten Hag, it's the club as a whole. The physio said to him, oh, you'll have a left back, don't worry. Send him back. We'll try and get someone else in. And then we ended up playing a right back at left back for the rest of the season. And that could make a difference there. Beanie's absolutely spot on. We lost Højlund just after we beat Luton 2-1. And then we went to lose to Fulham. But the thing for me is, in these games, it's like the tide had turned. So where we was conceding late equalisers, we were scoring late winners, and we was getting away with it. Not getting away with it, but we were showing a bit of something. The Kobe Mino goal against Wolves. There were games where we struggled. I think Fulham was one of them. We score late, and then they scored in like the 97th minute to make it 2-1. Happened at Forest as well. We scored to get it back to 1-1, I think it was, and then immediately conceded to make it 2-1. It just flipped a little bit. So I get that the injuries can be an excuse in one aspect of it, and he's sort of been hard done to by his medical staff in the other part of it. But in it, there was a period where we was playing a skeleton back four, and we was winning, and we was quite consistent. And I genuinely, I've mentioned it a few times, I think it's because, in fact, Beanie's just mentioned it, and he's spot on. In those periods where we was consistent, we had goal scorers. McTominay was popping up with doubles. Højlund were getting doubles. Garnacho was getting doubles. And that was making all the difference. It was literally the difference maker on the pitch between the draw or the loss or a win. So as much as the defence has been an issue this season, goal scoring inconsistency has been an issue this season. And this is where I take a little bit of stock from it, because most of our forwards and most of our midfielders are young men. So this is all an experience for them. So hopefully this experience this season means that we might get 15 goals more next season from them. And that means we finish 4th instead of 6th or 8th or wherever you want to put them. But it's all an experience for them.
It's maybe. I'm going to split our sort of last 2 bits of the season review in terms of the matches into 2, and that'll be League and FA Cup. And we'll kick off with the League because obviously that's the most depressing of the 2. But so ignore the fact that at this point, as I said, we've just beaten Everton. We then managed to go and miraculously defeat Liverpool 2 in the quarterfinals. When you look at our league form from that moment on, it's a draw to Brentford. We had the 4-3 loss to Chelsea, which is, literally a week or so, a couple of weeks after we've done the same thing to Liverpool. Chelsea go and do it to us. Talk about getting humbled as quickly as you possibly can. We draw with Liverpool, a great game with 2 superb goals in them. But again, we were winning 2-1 up. And I remember coming out of that game with my nephew, who's on TikTok. If you wanted to go and watch that one, he's absolutely huge. And of course, the queue to get out of Old Trafford was just absolutely horrific. And we were sat on the same bit of road for about half an hour. And all I could listen to, I couldn't even have TalkSport on. I just had to sit and just kept on going, oh, for God's sake, Barry. It feels like a loss. And it's like, we didn't lose, Kai. It was a draw. It's like, yeah, but it feels like a loss because we were winning and now and we drew right at the very end. And I had some sympathy with him, but equally, I mean, he's about 6'7". He's a boxer. But genuinely, at that point, I felt I probably could have knocked him out because it's like, this isn't helping me. I need to be not thinking about the football. You're just sitting there for half an hour going, man, we should have won that. We should have won that. But this is what it was doing to us. We're all sitting there going, it shoulda, woulda, coulda every single time. And yeah, incredibly frustrating. But then we had a draw against Bournemouth again. And at this point, we were sort of showing a bit of tenacity, but the amount of draws we had was unreal. We beat Sheffield United, draw to Burnley. Crystal Palace beat us 4-0, which was horrific. We had a tight defeat to Arsenal, just about managed to get some revenge on Newcastle, beat Brighton at the end of the season. But that inconsistency, the league in general, wasn't great. Matt, in terms of the league, can you accept the fact that we finished 8th this season? And in hindsight, looking at the whole thing, think, well, that's about fair that we finished 8th? Or do you think, not we should, but we could finish higher?
I think we can always say we could finish higher because that's where you aspire to be. You don't go into a season wanting to finish 8th or aiming to finish 8th, especially at a club like United. You want to be finishing as high as possible. I think with the inconsistencies throughout the whole season, stretching right from start to finish, I kind of feel like we sort of finished where we deserve to finish. As much as it pains me to say that, I think 8th is probably about right. I think the most frustrating thing is seeing teams like because Chelsea, another example, them finishing above us, it kind of set the tone right at the end of the league season, them finishing above us, and us finishing as low down as 8th. But it did come as no surprise because we were far too inconsistent, and you're never going to stand any chance of even being near top 4 with the sort of results we were getting, points we were dropping. It was just never going to happen, unfortunately. So yeah, sadly, I think 8th was probably about right come the end of the season.
I think that's fair. I cannot imagine a more specific set of numbers being put in there. If Martinez is sure and fit for 7 more, I would love to know how you've come to the number 7. What was it, a mathematical thing? Why not 6? Why not 8? How did you get to 7? Why is 7 the magic number? That's what I want to know there, John. So make sure you do that. Beanie, what say you? League form this season, not ideal. Where do you sort of rank it? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think if you look at it without being sort of reactionary after a game, I think if you kind of digest what's happened, 8th is probably right. We could have been higher, but that's the thing. You cut out mistakes like Chelsea game. You cut out Dalot diving in or not diving in. You cut out a poor penalty decision. But I think I'm always a big believer of the league is a very good sort of barometer of where you are as a club. And it doesn't lie at the end of it. If you're finishing 8th, it's because, for lack of a better word, you've been fairly shit. And I think that's pretty much where United are. We've been very inconsistent, and we've got what we deserve, pretty much. That's it. So I tried to find something a little bit more eloquent there, but that's the best I had.
I just didn't expect it. Like, that's not even that you swore. I was just like, for want of a better word, and then just wallop straight out. Fair enough. You know, diabolical, dire, awful. No, just straight up. End of. Fair play. Tell us how you really feel. That's exactly what it's all about. Dan, league form for you. I mean, I do have to mention this because when we were trying to do the thumbnail for this, I put in the order and I said, I want, obviously we're going to have the FA Cup win. And I actually said this. What about the 7-0 against Liverpool? You absolutely mugged me off when you said this last time because you had me thinking that was this season, but it wasn't. It was last season. So, Simon, you've killed me a little bit there, mate. And I got mugged off in the group chat. So thanks for that. And now you are trying to make me think it's still happening. But I know it was bad, but it was last season. So let's not get ourselves too upset this season. But yeah, Dan, for you, the league form, we know it wasn't good enough. But what do you make of it? What's your sort of final word on the league in that respect?
I think the league's the one thing that you can't really disagree with. You finish where you deserve to finish. It's over so many games that it's your deserved position. You can argue, like I personally think there's a I think it was the 1-1 draw with Brentford that I went, top four's gone completely. We need to give up because we scored in the 95th minute and conceded in the 97th. But the 2 penalties against Chelsea, one in particular, they're so debatable. It's made me question VAR in general. Then we gave a penalty away against Liverpool. I think we gave 2 more penalties away in 2 or 3 more games after that. We gave like 5 penalties away in 6 games, I think it was. And most of them, not all of them, but most of them were really bad decisions that we've had not given for us this season. So you could argue that some of it was a little bit of luck that turned, but it was the same sort of stuff again, just scoring and conceding late. When we scored that goal against Chelsea to make it 3-2, that should be it. That should be game over. When you score in the 95th minute against Brentford, that should be it. It should be game over. It should be a 1-0 win. And that is the difference between finishing 8th and finishing 4th. But I always felt we was chasing a losing battle. You look at the Villa's end of the season, Spurs' end of the season, neither were fantastic. They was up and down themselves. The damage had already been done before Christmas because we were so inconsistent. It's really brave of Connor to say that once we beat Villa, he thought we finished top 4, because leading up to that point, it was absolutely shocking. It was after that point where we won like 8 of 9 that we looked like we could get something. But it's frustrating in terms of where we finished. I go back to what he's doing with the team for me. I've always said that I'm quite happy to finish 8th if we're having a full reset, and we're going to give youth a chance. And when you sit back and look at the squad now, Kobe Mainoo's got loads of minutes, Garnacho's had loads of minutes, Ahmad's coming through, Camboala's got some time on the pitch this season. There's probably a couple of other players that maybe I would have chucked in, give a go against the Burnleys and your Sheffield Uniteds that you didn't do. But as long as there's a plan where we can see these players are the future of the club, I don't mind that we're going to finish 8th and maybe 6th and then maybe 4th before we back anywhere near where we need to be. That's the way it's going to be. You've got to accept that. We're not the Man United of 15 years ago. There's a rebuild in place. So it's just, you finish where you finish in the Premier League, unfortunately. If you win it, you deserve to win it. If you finish second, you deserve to finish second.
Very true. Very true indeed. So that indeed was that. That was the league. And then, of course, came the absolute joy of the FA Cup. We've had that 4-3 win against Liverpool, which people weren't necessarily expecting. We had, I just remember the FA Cup draw going, well, we're probably going to get one of the other 2 teams. It'll be City, win it, or, it's not going to be an easy one. And we got Coventry, and I'm like, oh my God, it's written in the stars. And you get to half time, and you're 3-0 up, and you think, oh, this is just wonderful. We're going to make the FA Cup without any dramas whatsoever. And the last, honestly, I couldn't believe what I was watching. It was so frustrating. We still got through, and we do have to remember that. And there is, question marks over a couple of the decisions and things that happened. But the most important thing for me was we got through and we made it to the final. And thank God we did. It was written in the stars in the end. We did end up getting it. But my God, when you look over the FA Cup, Matt, this isn't one where we've bossed the competition and just gone on to do it. This, to me, feels a little bit like a Rocky victory. And what I mean by that, if you go to the end of any Rocky film, sorry if I'm about to ruin this for any of you, Connor, if you're watching, listen, because this will help you with 5 films that you've never seen before. Basically, Rocky goes through all of it. He's a bit of a big man, fights really well, but when he gets to the last match, he gets absolutely walloped for about 11 rounds, blood coming out of everywhere, can't stand up, but somehow in the last round, he finds a punch that knocks people out. And that, I think, is our FA Cup journey this season. We've been punched from pillar to post. We've been knocked on the floor. Like Tyson Fury, we managed to get ourselves up literally on the count of 9 in the game against Coventry. And somehow, we've walked away with a win. Having played, might I add, bloody well in that first half, especially, and then holding on as best as we could in the second half. We deserved the cup final in that match. And I don't think even Simon would disagree with that one. But prior to that, unbelievable. How do you rate our FA Cup this season? Because we've won it, but good God, that was the roller coaster.
Yeah, I think the FA Cup always is. So you're never going to waltz the FA Cup. It's either you win it or you don't. Pretty much with the cup competition. I think it was the only competition we had a bit of fight about us. in terms of our performances, to be quite honest. Obviously, we played like teams like Wigan, which you'd expect us to beat. But I think the Liverpool win at Old Trafford kind of set the tone for where the FA Cup was going to go for us. I think the fact that we sort of like took the lead, then at one point we were behind. I think to come back mentally against a team like that, to come back and do what they did and pull off what they did was, for me, the deciding factor in it all. Yeah, we got Coventry in the semi-final, which you can say was on our side with the draw, which you would do, but at the end of the day, you can only play what's in front of you. Like they say, Coventry was first half brilliant. We cruising it. Again, we sort of like hit our Manchester United in the league sort of type form. Mistakes, let them back into the game. Obviously, we nearly went out with an offside goal, which VAR thankfully saved us on. But yeah, I think we were sort of after the season we had in the league, I think we were sort of destined to get to the final, and to obviously beat City in the final was just the icing on the cake. To sum up, a disappointing season, but to end it on a high by beating City, you couldn't really ask for much more, really. But it was thoroughly deserved, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, John Commode, we've just seen there putting it down as his favourite FA Cup run of all time. So that's quite good. Just for updates, for those who are interested, he said 6 or 7 games. So he's changing his mind now. It's not mathematical. It's 6 or 7. If you ask him again, it'll be 5 or 6, So it was all rough. He does this every now and again. He comes out with stuff and then he's just like, well, actually, that's not quite what I meant. But he's right on this one. As he said on the stream in January prior to Wigan, I said it will be if we'll either lose to Wigan or we'll get to the final. And I even said to Dan it would be another United versus City final. How right I was. So, as much as he just writes things on the back of fag packets sometimes, that one was absolutely spot on. So well done, John. We like to praise you when you do well. Beanie, FA Cup, how does it rank for you, mate?
Oh, it's up there, isn't it? It felt a little bit to me like name on the cup. There was a few moments where the Newport game, the Coventry game, I think we felt a little bit complacent to me when we got ourselves into certain positions in the game. Definitely the Coventry one. We just took our foot off the gas and we let them in, and then we didn't really know what to do. Do you know what I mean? But I thought we were lucky with the offside at Coventry. Penalties is a lottery, but that Liverpool game, wow, what a game that was. I mean, I think we was actually quite lucky that we had Liverpool and Man City, because they're two of the teams that this season, I think the 2 games that the players seem to be able to get up for. Do you know what I mean? Where if we was playing if we was playing maybe a Tottenham in the final, they may have not been at that level. So I think we were quite lucky in a way that we got Liverpool and City. But yeah, it's amazing, the FA Cup, weren't it? Like Matt said, it just ended a pretty awful season, but amazing. We got into Europe as well. Can't argue with that.
Absolutely. Well done as well for finding a separate adjective. So good job there. FA Cup, same question. There's nothing hiding in that one. How does that rank for you winning the FA Cup?
I agree with John, actually. I thought he was one of the better runs, because you talk about the League Cup last season and people say, oh, he was gifted a run to the final, etc., because we got all easy teams, easy draws. This was not an easy run to the FA Cup. You remember that we beat Forest 1-0 away with a 90th minute goal, 89th minute Casemiro, I think, something like that. Liverpool, obviously, just what a game that was. Just take a moment to think about Anthony's right foot goal again. Just incredible. Nobody thought that was going to happen in the football lottery this season. And then beating Man City in the final as well. Now, I've got to be honest, like, it's great beating Man City in the final, but the Liverpool game just means more. I constantly shrug my shoulders at City at the minute. I feel sorry for fans that have supported City before 2008, because it's a tough watch for them, I'd imagine, at the minute with how City are. They're suing the Premier League. They've lost the roots of the football club. It's got to be a difficult one, because they've got to be emotionally invested because it's the club, but they must be shaking their head a little bit at what's going on, because it's not the club they've supported for probably most of their lives, if they're long-term legacy fans, let's say. But yeah, it was an amazing thing. And I'd like to give Ten Hag credit in the sense that I agree with what Beanie's saying with Liverpool. It's lucky it was Liverpool and Man City, because I feel like he's adapted well against these teams. Like, even when we've lost to City at times this season, we've played well for a good chunk of it, and we could have got something from the game. And it's the same. So it was the same with Liverpool. He seemed to adjust really well to play Liverpool, change his tactics slightly, and we could get something out the games. And we was lucky not to beat them at Old Trafford again. Dodgy penalty decision for me after watching it back about 25 times. But yeah, it honestly is one of my favourite FA Cup runs because it's not been gifted, and no one can say, "Oh, it was easy. You got all easy teams to the final," because we didn't. We've played two of the best teams in the country and we've beat them. So, yeah, it actually was one of my favourites as well.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. He's still trying to explain the 7. Just let it go. Let it go. You've got nothing on that one. Just say 2 months next time. Don't be sitting there giving it 7 games.
Or just do a tone and say Luke Shaw's world class. We would have won the Prem with him.
Exactly. Anthony's right here again as well, though. Several people leaving City, and absolutely, there's lots of them leaving the City women's department. Sean Gota, who's like a Man City legend, he's left, and that's a weird thing. You know, that would be like Bobby Charlton having left us of his own free will. You know, obviously he's nowhere near as good as Bobby Charlton. I'm not saying he's as good as a player, but in terms of love for the club, there is no way he was going to go anywhere. Feed the goats and he will score. I do remember those conversations. He's standing by it. Well, he's dying on this hill, and R.I.P. John on that one because. You know, you've definitely gone. And yes, you were. Yes, you were. But it'll be very interesting to see how that works out, because it does feel like with them as well trying to sue the Premier League, I think they've lost the plot ever so slightly there. So that's an interesting one. Right, to finish our review off, before we have just 1 or 2 other bits to discuss. Very simple ones now. It doesn't require a lot of conversation. You can have maybe 20 seconds to explain your decision, because we don't want any John Commode moments here. But there's 5 topics that I want you to rate out of 10. And then what we're going to do is double your final score, so we get a score out of 100, because scores out of 50 are odd. So why are you looking at me like that? It's 5 things, so you could potentially get 50 out of 50, which would be 100 out of 100. That's the same thing. It's ratio, mate. It's how it works. A bit like fractions. Don't get into it. Mathematically, it's correct. It's just nobody ever says, "Oh, that was a 27 out of 50 season." No, that would be pathetic. You got 54 out of 100, because out of 100 is how things work. So it's a 54% season. Don't start. It works. The magic's there.
I was just thinking if I was allowed to say 7 or not.
Of course, absolutely. 7 is absolutely fine. To be fair, if we get high enough, we might round it up to 115. We'll see, but we'll get there. I'm going to see if we can get that number in just randomly over the course of the pre-season, because it'll be a laugh. And Simon, just to say to you, we haven't forgotten your question. We are going to ask that. So if you are going now, that's absolutely fine. But if you get a chance tomorrow, come back and we'll have answered that question at the end. We didn't ignore you. It's just it didn't quite fit in where we were. So don't want you to be thinking that we've ignored you, but cheers for coming along. So 5 topics. Your topics are this. You've got to rank the league season out of 10, the FA Cup out of 10, the Champions League out of 10, and the Carabao Cup performances out of 10. You can give whatever you like for that, but you can't go for minus numbers, because that just ruins the game. You can say 0 if you want, but we're not going, -7, because that just, you know, why would you say that? The last one I struggled with a bit, but I want you to sort of talk about the team in that one. So it could be, when you look at it as a whole, obviously you'll look at things like the Sancho drama, the Greenwood drama that we've had. That's going to give you less points. But you might then look at Mainu coming through, Garnacho doing as well as he did, Højlund scoring 16 in his first season. You might think that actually that outweighs it. So sort of team morale, just the team, I suppose. You can kind of see where I'm going with that, whereabouts you'd rank it. Treble season, it was a 10. You know, relegated season in the 70s, probably a 0. Yeah, that sort of thing. So just sort of where you're feeling about with the team. So round in order, we're going to kick off with the league. Matt.
It's the league was disappointing. I'd probably go down. Probably about a 2 for the league. I thought it was pretty dismal. The league, it's very depressing.
Beanie?
4.
4. Dan, by this current progression, I'm assuming you're going for a 6.
No, I'm going to jump bang in the middle and say a 3.
I'm really intrigued about that, because that's out of 10. And I'm not going to lie, I stole this idea from somebody on Twitter in terms of sort of ranking the season. And for the league, there were so many people doing what you've just done, sort of like twos, fives. It was really low. And I just thought, we didn't get relegated. Like 0 must surely be relegated. Like that, to be fair, I might have let you go minus numbers if they got relegated. But 0 you assume is relegation. So mid-table you've got to think is around about a 5. I would have probably given it a 6, I think, for the league, because although it's not what we would have wanted, it's not the end of the world. Like we haven't been relegated.
I'm going to go for this. I'm going to go for a John Commode thought process here. So I thought we'd finish 4th. We finished 8th. So if we would have finished 4th, I would have said it was a 7 because it can't be a 10 because we didn't win anything. So I'm going to take a 7. Yeah, 6 or a 7. So I'm going to take a point away for every position that we drop down, which would give me a 3.
Listen, it's your ranking system. You're absolutely welcome to do it. But if you're giving us 3 for the league, I don't even want to think about what some of these others are going to be. Champions League. Matt, my old friend. How do you like Champions League?
It's nice. We did show signs in it. I'd probably give the Champions League probably I'd go for a 3 for the Champions League just because we possibly qualified for any other competition. But obviously, we did show signs in games. Fair against Bayern, we weren't actually as bad as what the results shown. But yeah, I'd go for a 3.
Okay. People agree with you. John agrees with you. You two are getting a horrible little alliance, and I'm not sure I like it. It's probably, I may have to banish the two of you ever being on the same streams again. Andy, Champions League.
Performances were okay. Individual errors, finished bottom. I got to go 4 again. I can't go any higher than a 5. I don't think so. I'm going to go 4.
Fair play. Dan?
I'm struggling with this one because the performances weren't terrible, but we only beat Copenhagen 1-0 and we finished bottom of the group.
Yeah.
I would say 2.
I think again, Champions League getting there is important. I mean, I'm probably more likely to go with Beanie on that one because it wasn't quite good enough. You need to get into the knockout stage, and I think if we were going into the knockout stages, then you start looking at getting above the 5. So I think you're sort of about halfway there. But the fact that we didn't even get to the Europa League, I would go along with Beanie. I think I agree with Beanie on this one. I've gone a 4 out of 10. That's a fair point. I like that, Beanie. Good job. The Coca-Cola Cup, as NT's called it, I used to love it when it was the Coca-Cola Cup. I don't even know what Carabao is. I've never drunk
it.
An
energy drink.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. I've never even seen it. I've been in shock.
Neither have I.
I don't know where this has come from. It's like when you used to get Mountain Dew and you see it in America and it tastes brilliant. You try it over here and it tastes like somebody's, I don't know, excreted it. It's horrific. There's a good word for you. You could use that one. So, Matt, the Coca-Cola / Carabao / Carling Cup. It always seems to be companies that begin with a C. That'd be interesting. Matt, what do you reckon?
See, that wasn't the greatest of competitions either. I think the way it ended with that 3-0 defeat to Newcastle, which we were talking about earlier on, which was absolutely appalling. I'm probably going to have to go for probably a 3 again. Just the way it ended was horrible.
Fair play. So just to confirm, you think our Carabao Cup and our Champions League performances as a whole were better than our league performances, marginally?
I think because the league's over a long period of time and the consistency was from when you're going from like August to May the following year, it's over a longer period of time. So that's why I went for a lower on the league. But
fair point. I like your explanation. I should let it slide. That's a good job. Beanie, I feel like Taskmaster on this one. It's great. Andy, what about you?
Yeah, we're just how we went out against Newcastle, being poor. Went out quite early in the competition as well. 2 for me.
2 for you. Fair enough. Dan?
I'm struggling with this one, to be honest, because in my opinion, the 3-0 against Palace was one of the better performances of the season. It was absolutely amazing, start to finish.
Probably one out to Palace.
Yeah, well, and they had changed the team completely as well, I can remember. But performance-wise, it's one of the only 90-minute ones I've seen. But then we got absolutely mullered by a Newcastle third team. Yeah, it's going to have to be 2 for me.
He's gone 2. I've got to be honest, finally we're on the same page. I thought the Carabao Cup was atrocious and I would have gone for a 2. That was absolutely awful. There's no way we should be going out at that point to that team. No way, no how. Okay, so FA Cup. Matt.
I think the fact that we actually won it after such a disappointing season, I'd probably have to give it a 10. To be honest with you, the fact we've actually beat Liverpool and beat City in the final after such a terrible season, it's got to be a 10. It was brilliant way to spend the season.
10 for Matt, very good. I like it. Beanie.
Yeah, the fact we beat City and the Scousers, won the cup, 10 for me.
100, yeah, love it. Dan.
I'm going to be slightly harsh. I'm going to give it a 9 because I've still not forgiven them for what they did against Coventry. It scarred me to my absolute soul when we conceded the third one, and then the VAR one. I've still not forgiven it. Honestly, I was this close. So they're getting a 9.
Best cup run you've ever seen in your life. Most enjoyable, 9.5 out of 10. You are the sort of person that mystery shoppers are invented for.
It is, yeah. But 9, just because I
can't give
forgive
you 10 out of 10. There's always room for improvement.
That's it. Can't forgive him for that at all. I'm still emotionally scarred.
You're the only one that's gone 9. That's pathetic. I'm not, no, you're not the only one, of course. Your new best mate and brother, John Commode, has got the markdowns of Coventry game. Unbelievable. By the way, NT, loving this. This is a really good idea. Something we've done on WOFO. But yeah, we could definitely come up with some Room 101 opinions. I'm writing this down. This sounds like the sort of thing we're looking for some stuff to do during the close season. And that absolutely could be a very good one. So I like that. Well done, you. So I went for a 10. So the team one was the last one. So again, this is sort of, I suppose what I'm looking for is the connection to the team. You know, sometimes you sit there and you don't feel quite so connected. Under the Mourinho years, for me, this was getting to a 0 and a 1 because I just didn't care. It's like whatever. So well, they lost today. That's great, brilliant. Until Mourinho's gone, I'm not going to care because it's like watching paint dry. But that's grown. Solskjaer came back. All of a sudden, my love for the team was a 10. Rangnick came in. Now all of a sudden, it's a 3. It's like you have that sort of feeling. Where do we stand with the team? I'm going to go the other way around on this one. I want to give Matt the thinking time. And to be honest with you, finishing on Dan is upsetting me each time. So if we get out of the way, hopefully you lot can bring me back in. So Dan, would you sort of rate the team?
Matt, you know what your task is now. You got to upset Barry.
I'll tell you, you start getting this side as well, Matt. That's it. I'm just going to go out of the stream and you lot can finish it off by yourself.
It's a difficult one. I'm going to completely ignore all the bad stuff that's happened because I'm hoping that those players involved in whichever one you want to decide don't come back to the club, so they're gone. And honestly, the more we got to the end of the season and the more people were pointing out that we're playing Minu, we're playing Garnacho, we've got Kamwala coming in and stuff like that, it sort of made me realise that I saw that, it made me laugh. We've got a basis for something there if hopefully Ten Hag gets the backing that he should get in the summer from the club, and these are changes that need to be made. So there's definitely something there to be able to enjoy these players in this team. So I'm going to say 6.
6. Well done. Can I just offer my sincere congratulations to you, Dan, on winning the award for services to being the Women's Football Ally, I believe it was.
Oh, so, sweet.
Congratulations, Jermaine. Well done.
Is that what I got for coming 4th in the league?
4th of it, exactly that, yeah. We fixed it for you to do that. Beanie, the team?
Yeah, a little bit like what Dan says. I think there's a really good nucleus there to build around. Got a lot of dead wood that we need to ship on, but we all know that. But I think there is a really good nucleus, and I think there's players that we can really get behind for the future, like Manu, Garnacho. I like what I see with Hoyland. I think there's promise there. I'm going to go 7 on this one. I think I'm going to go positive and go 7.
Nice. I've just realised that I've put and score in Matt's one, because I'm just still going in the same order. So I'm just going to pop that down there. So we're doing that to you, Matt. And this is where you go, oh, yeah, I'm going 6. I'm like, oh, for God's sake, I didn't need to cross it out. I will see. Matt, what do you reckon about the team?
Yeah, I kind of agree with what Dan and Andy said in terms of obviously the younger players coming through. Obviously, Ganacho being in the team on a regular basis now, Mainu having a brilliant first season, the first team. I think the connection there between them as players is very clear to see as well on the pitch, as well as between them and the fans, which is quite good to see. I think you can't ignore obviously the Sancho issues and things going on behind the scenes. Also, that's caused problems for Ten Hag in particular. We don't know what impact that had on the dressing room as a whole, which obviously can't have been great. I was actually going to go for a 6. Yeah, I think 6 is about right. Like we say, there is a lot of players there that do need to be shipped on this summer, but the core of the team's definitely there, and the young players is definitely a huge positive.
I think that sounds about right, to be honest with you. I've gone 7 purely because we won the FA Cup, and they've shown me in that FA Cup game that actually they still have a little bit of fire. They have that ability to go out there and do the right thing and play for the badge in the manner that they really should have done all season, and to do better at. So I'm with Beanie. I'm going to go on the positive side of that one. So, Matt, that means you ended up with 12, 15, 18, 24. So that is 48 out of 100. So 48% you are giving them. Beanie, you went for 4, 8, 18, 20, 27. So you've gone 54%. Christ, I mentioned that earlier on. That was the number that I gave. Who would have thought we ended up there? Dan, you've gone for 12, 14, 16, 22, 44%, you miserable git. And me over here has gone 6, 10, 16, 20, 22, 29. So I actually gave it a 58%. So as is usually the world here, I was incredibly positive and the most positive on the panel, and as ever, Dan was the worst. But next week he will be on 58% because he loves a little flip flop. So there we go. It's his favourite thing to wear around the swimming pool. That's wrong. So there we go. That is our end of season review with regards to that. Now, I do need to mention a couple of things. Simon mentioned this earlier on, Simon Warner. We had the business with Greenwood and Sancho. We absolutely did. Now, I've noticed through Twitter today the news that Mason Greenwood has been put onto the retained list. And I just want to, this channel is not clickbaity, and I rarely use that absolute cretin's name while we are sat here on this channel. But I do need to just try and, I don't think any of you lot would be taken in by such rubbish. But yes, he's on the retained list. Of course he's on the retained list. We haven't sold him. And if he's on loan, he still belongs to us. So that's why he's on the retained list, because we're not just going to get rid of him. If we were going to get rid of him and not worry about getting any money for him, that would have happened last season when we had that whole furore in the first place. So I just want to make sure that people are understanding that is a perfectly normal thing. The people that are going mad on Twitter are people that I am convinced don't really care about Manchester United as much as they might like to claim they do, and are just there because it's the team that's hated, adored, and never, ever ignored. It's not to say that there is not a possibility that he might end up staying, and that there is, of course, a world where he could end up putting the shirt on again. If that happens, I'll be putting myself into room 101, and I won't be coming out of it until he's gone, because I will never, ever come on this channel whilst he is putting on a shirt for this club, because it's morally wrong for me. But as I've said, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to do that. The chances are, and the most likely thing is that he will be sold, or he will go out on loan again, simply because, and I've had this argument with Pep Guardiola, actually, the person you would have seen in the TikTok, which is that basically everything that happened wasn't Manchester United's fault. And you can't blame them, I don't think, for wanting to try and get some return on the investment that they've put into a player, whilst also trying to do the correct thing morally. So I'm hoping that's what he's going to do and what's going to happen. But I did just want to point that out, because, like I said, I saw that earlier on Twitter, and quite frankly, it wound me up a little bit. Dave's only gone for 40%, so we're going to let you off, Dan. You're no longer the grumpiest person in the room. I want to know what Twilumba's number was, because his is even in like 5% or 75%, depending on how you're feeling, and it could swing anywhere between the two. We're going to quickly answer this question for Simon. It was one that was mentioned, but it didn't, like I say, fit naturally in the conversation we're having. So, have you all seen signs of progression in the last 2 seasons? I'll give you a minute each to just sort of answer that question. I won't butt in again, just go straight round. Matt, Beanie, and Dan.
I wouldn't. Bit harsh. I probably won't maybe use so much use the word progression. I think last season, I think I'd probably use the word overachieved. This year, I'd probably say not as much as a team. I think more as an individual. Obviously, like I said, the youngsters coming through, I think is a huge positive. That's a sign of the progression this year. I think as a team, it's hard to really judge, obviously, because the amount of injuries, the swapping and changing of the team. I think it's quite hard to judge in terms of progression as a whole. But I think individually, individual players, Garnacho, Mania in particular, Højlund, I think will progress as the years go on. I think individually progression, yes. As a team, not so much.
Yeah, I agree with Matt. I think as a team, it feels a little bit like we've gone backwards to me. But I don't know if that is because we've had 60 odd injuries and he hasn't had the team he wants out and stuff. Yeah, I just can't see us finishing 8th and seeing progression there, man. It feels like we've gone back. But again, extenuating circumstances and all that. So hopefully better next season.
I'd like to say yeah, but I don't feel like we've progressed any further than where Solskjaer was when Solskjaer was in charge. So I think progression is probably the wrong word. I'd say I've seen something that will make me hopeful. That if Ten Hag's backed properly, we could kick on. Progression, you can't argue with his effectiveness. He's won 2 trophies in 2 years. So let's see how he gets on in the summer, if he gets on in the summer.
He will. If he was going to go, that would have been announced by now. Why would you? Why would you wait this long? To be honest,
it has been announced 40 million times by 16 different journalists. It's just none of them have got a clue.
It would be announced by United, is what I mean.
Yes.
And I can't see them waiting a week and a bit. Like if they wanted to get rid of one, they got rid of one immediately after the FA Cup when it was Van Gaal. I can't imagine they're sitting there and in that much as to whether or not they want to keep Erik Ten Hag. So I feel like that's going to be okay. My answer to the progression, Simon, very simple. Yes, to a degree, because we won the Mickey Mouse Cup last year and we won the proper cup this year. So, there's an element of progression there. The fact that we made it to the final again and that we were able to have some success in an otherwise dismal season. The injuries, I think, are an important point to look at. I think that was difficult because it wasn't just the number of injuries, it was where they were. I think if we had 1 or 2 injuries more in midfield rather than defence, you probably could have covered it a bit more because you're using your first choice defenders. But when you're consistently having to pick players in a back 4 in front of a goalkeeper who's only just started for the club, that's really tricky, I think, and you've got the communication problems about, does Onana understand the way that we want him to play at this club? Is he being forced to not come out and do the sort of things that he used to do? Because we didn't see him on the halfway line as much as I think we thought we were going to. So, one of those, I think. So, is there a progression? Yes, to a degree, but it's minimal because the league form negates that as well. And I agree with NT. I think next season will be a lot more telling of where we are as a club, providing we maintain some consistency within the team. So, there we go. Right, I answered that question. Jarvis has jumped in as he likes to do right at the end with an interesting question. So here it is. Thoughts on Man City counter-suing the Premier League for not being able to spend the money they've clearly spent since 2012. The whole situation does feel a little bit balmy, doesn't it? This idea. It's almost as if they've just had enough and as if they just want to drag it through the courts a little bit more. We know the 115 charge is going to be debated and answered and discussed. I think in November is when they're looking at for that. That's again, the season would have started by then again. I don't know what the answer is going to be and what they're going to do, but I do have to ask the question because Jarvis has asked it there. Again, in a minute or so, your thoughts on Man City, because it's not a City stream and I don't really care about them, but it's been asked. And, the whole point of having people come into the chat is that we try and answer the questions if they ask them. So I'll leave that on screen for you again. Same thing, around you go.
Like I say, it's not something that really interests me as such. Obviously, it is something to keep an eye on, obviously, but I think until November, until we know what's happening with the charges, it's hard to really judge what's going to happen. I just think it's very interesting that all of a sudden they're taking these extreme measures of suing the Premier League. I think it kind of, to me, it smacks a guilty look, but I suppose we'll find out in a few months' time.
Yeah, I agree. It just stinks of guilt to me. I mean, they could have easily complied with the Premier League with documents and all that I've seen that they've apparently withheld from the Premier League. They could have made it a lot easier to get this sorted. They're clearly trying to drag it out. It just stinks of guilt to me.
I've paid a little bit more interest than most in this because my intent is to go back to every single tweet and that I've bookmarked and just lay down some absolute grief to them. It frustrates me this because it's very, very, very clear what's happened to everybody except City fans that are in denial. Man City's inflation of profits are higher than Liverpool, Man United, and Arsenal put together in the last 10 years. And we're talking about two of the biggest clubs in the world. No offense, Arsenal fans, but you're just not at that table yet. You're not won a European Cup. You're talking about literally two of the biggest clubs in not just the country or Great Britain, the world. And they've net incomes massively over the top of them two. It's the equivalent of what they've done here is buying a Ferrari, racing it 120 miles an hour around the streets, and then saying to the copper, "Well, I don't like it at 6 miles an hour. I'm going to sue you. I'm not having it." It does it, and it reeks of guilt. They're doing it as a last ditch.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do this because we hope that it'll knock 70 charges off the 115, and it's baffling. I'll say it. I've said it quite a few times this season. If this isn't dealt with correctly by the Premier League and those within the Premier League, because we've got to remember that it's majority rule in the Premier League. So these rules that are in place now have been voted for by every other member of the Premier League, and they was passed. So we have to. It's a democracy. We have to accept that. That's how it works. Mm-hmm. They're going against. So for me, if I was the other teams, I would say, what's the punishment for this? They're suing the governing body. If I was the Premier League at this point, because I would be this rash, I'd go, bye. You're out. If you don't like the rules, don't join the competition. It's that simple. Yeah. We'll revoke your membership. But they need to deal with it because if it's not dealt with properly, it's going to kill the Premier League as a spectacle. I literally, if they do this on City's wrist, I'm going to go, done. No, there's no point in watching it anymore. Because, and I get we give City grief and stuff like that, but I genuinely don't care if they win anything because of what we've seen. I just shrug.
I saw an absolutely unbelievable thread that was really helping to explain it. I can't remember who the geezer was who did it, but he spent a lot of time really going into.
It might have been Magic Hat.
It could be that, but there's lots of it going on about the charges and how that's gone. And something will stick. The problem they've got is that it's over such a long period of time. What do? Are they going to take away the honours? Are they going to relegate them? And I think this is part of the big issue with waiting. It's like, what are they going to do? Because Man City are one of the biggest clubs in the Premier League at the moment. And obviously the way in which they play and the eyes that are put onto the product worldwide through City playing and having the team that they have is massive. But having said all of that, there's got to be some form of relegation because if Everton and that lot are getting 3-4 points here or there just for these tiny little charges, you've got to be expecting them to be pushed down into, at the very least, the Championship, if not League One, or even League Two. You know, Rangers were sent back into the absolute Outer Hebrides, effectively, up there. You know, so yeah, I think, and yes, they do have great lawyers, but even though they've got great lawyers, I'm not convinced it's I'm not convinced it's the most important bit about the lawyers necessarily. I think really for them, it is going to come down to whether or not the Premier League have the cojones to do the right thing, because it's easy to take Everton and Nottingham Forest and give them a sanction, because let's be brutally honest, if Everton and Nottingham Forest went in the league next season, would we really care when it comes to the matches? Oh my God, I'm really missing the game against Everton. No, Do I care that we're not playing Nottingham Forest? No. If Man City aren't in there, who are you promoting? Leeds? Well, all right, Man United Leeds is going to give you a lot, but, you know, it really does take a lot out of the league, and that's a big, bold move for them to do. But I agree, send them into the Northern Conference. Why not? Absolutely.
It'll be interesting though, because it'll be partway through the season. If it's November time, what happens then?
This is it, exactly. What do they do? Do they just deduct the points then and effectively relegate them that season?
Yeah.
And that's what I feel might end up happening. You know, they just sort of sit there and go, well, that's it, we're going to take 50 points off you or whatever. But it might be just enough, and I did hear this particular conspiracy theory being put across, that it's just enough that actually a Man City that wins the league could still
be in the league.
Stay in the league, because they'll sort of stay up by 2 or 3 points potentially. I know you can't really guess how many points is going to be the relegated points, but that they've got a fighting chance of still remaining in the league and do you know what? You could almost imagine like Sky Sports and everybody just absolutely dripping over it, couldn't you? Sort of like, oh, there we were on negative 50 points, and look at them here. They've survived relegation by 1 point. Can you believe it? And you could just imagine it. And it wouldn't be about why they were in that situation. It would all be about, oh, what a wonderful team they are for putting themselves out of the mire that they got themselves into.
What I do find interesting, though, really quickly, is there's rumours they want to ban Paqueta from West Ham for life for cheating because he's give betting tips away, and they want to ban him for life. What City have done is the equivalent to money laundering and fraud, allegedly. So there is no way that you could just go, we're giving you a 50-point deduction, because it doesn't add up to the punishments they're trying to pass out to a player. So if they're found guilty of these, exclusion is literally the only thing that's going to make people go, oh, Jesus, that's deserved.
It's the only thing that's going to make a difference as well.
Yeah.
Exactly that. And if you're Everton or Forest, you're immediately going to be going, well, hang on a minute, how are we for? And that, you know, how have you managed to do that? I know it wasn't much and it didn't get us relegated, but it could have, you know, and they didn't care then. So I don't know. Interesting. Right. We're going to have a very quick quiz because I've been getting my stats together. If you've got tabs open, it's honesty now, boys. We're not having none of this cheating. The tab that you've got open to try and find these answers.
I'm red now.
All right, but here we go. They're all about this season, and they are all statistical based. So I'm not going to be asking you too much difficult, I don't think. So, Premier League goals scored. How many?
What for?
58.
Not 58.
51.
Not 51.
59.
For Man United?
Yes, for Man United.
56.
No, Sheffield United, how many did they get?
56.
Oh, you're so close. None of you have got it spot on yet.
55.
Matt, have you had a guess?
55.
Afraid not. It was
60.
Literally, you've said everything but the one it is.
57.
55, 56. Yes, 57. There we go. Dan gets there in the end. Goodness me. So, with that in mind, this next question should be really easy. How many did we concede?
58.
Well done, Beanie. Got there quicker. Wow. 58, because we had a negative 1 goal difference. I knew that one would be easy for you. Here's another one for you. How many points did we get while finishing 8th?
60.
Yes, Beanie's on it. He's looked at his league that he's got written down there. Well done. Now, there were 4 scorers who got 10 goals or more this season. Now, I'm going to start with the person that's losing, which is Matt. You get first choice of a player who scored more than 10 goals this season. Go.
Bruno
is one, and I'm amazed that's the one you've gone for, but yes, well done.
That could have been the best player.
You've gone wrong. So, yes, Bruno is 1. Andy, you are going to be last because you are winning. So, Dan, you get this one.
Højlund,
of course, with 16. Very good. Beanie. Garnacho is another one. Well done. Which means there's one left. Who is it?
McTominay.
Yes, Dan. Not talking about there. Super Scott McTominay with 10, the same amount as Garnacho, but he's crap. Here's a good one for you. How many own goals were scored for us this season?
3.
5,
2,
4, 6.
0.
You mean
0,
one?
man. Absolutely. Trick question. You can get at least one. No own goals this season. Absolutely mad.
What by
Um,
United players?
No, for us.
For us.
Okay, that's where I got confused.
Well, it's easy to confuse you again. We've played in the FA Cup, made the final. We reached the second stage for us of the Carabao Cup. We made it through the group stages, but not past the group stages. And of course, we made the final, as I said, of the FA Cup. How many games in total did we play this season? I'm going to give
51?
you one guess on this one. So you said 51, Andy. Dan? Stop trying to do the
52.
maths. You're not John Commode.
52.
52 for you, Matt.
50. I'm going to go 54.
I can tell you one of you has got it spot on. It's not 56-ish.
Oh, why didn't I say 7?
I can confirm Dan's got it right. It was 52.
Ooh.
Well done. Good job, Fieldy. 52 it was. Now, this is the last question. First of all, what was the biggest win for us this season? So the game that had the biggest goal differential.
3-0?
3-0 was the right answer, Dan. And now, the last part of this, we did that twice. Which two teams did we beat 3-0 this season?
Crystal Palace.
Is one.
Everton?
Not Everton.
Oh,
West
we
Ham?
did beat Everton.
West Ham,
Ham, yeah.
Morgan.
Did we not
Just
beat
had
Everton
one.
3-0?
Everton was free at Goodison, weren't it?
1
Yeah.
second.
It was Beanie.
Martial even scored, didn't
Garnacho over head kick, wasn't it?
You get a bonus point for Everton because there was 3. Well done.
he?
Very small writing. Beanie. So let's count those points up. It's ever so exciting. Let's see. Dan has got
I
1,
think I've lost this one.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points for Dan. Beanie, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the end. Oh,
No, I've definitely lost them.
1, 2, 3, which means somehow, incredibly, Dan, basically with the 3-0 business, has managed to get at the death. So well done, boys and girls. That's it. That is our end of year review. It's over. We're not going to look back anymore because, my God, it was depressing as hell. Only the FA Cup that really made this even remotely exciting. So isn't that good news? We've got plenty to look forward to. This weekend, we are back for Saturday Night Live, and we will be doing this because Dan will be running one of his little quizzes. If you remember last Christmas, when I gave you my heart, the very next day, I was really annoyed because I was beaten by Andrew Wall and Dan Bateman. So we'll be back to have a little bit of that, which will be great fun. So it's another one of Dan's little quizzes for us to do. And then there's going to be another midweek one, I'm sure. We are going to do Room 101 and NT. You did a brilliant little post earlier on where you said actually building a pit in people's houses would make it really difficult for the Room 101, but I've already worked out exactly what we'll do. Because let's just say I disagreed with Dan. Then when I pull the lever, I just do this. He's in the pit. And then we just bring him back. We need to do it. So it's job done. Easy. So I think that's even better than them actually falling into a pit because there's no dramas and no risk assessment required. So there we go. And technically they do fall down because they're all on the bottom of my screen. So there we are. Matt, little shout out from you. Where can people find you?
You can follow me at __ Matt Morgan on Twitter. But yeah, thanks for having me on again. I really appreciate it. It's good fun.
Thank you. Beanie, where can people find you if they wanted to hear more of your dulcet tones?
MUFC Beanie 7 on TikTok. I got it written down.
I can't wait to get as old as me and you're struggling to read and you have to sort of go like that. To see what that's going to be, because it's going to be a giggle. And Dan, anything
Here,
you'd like to
as
shout out?
always.
Where can people find you whinging and moaning and being positively a ray of sunshine?
Either there or here, just in general.
Okie dokie. I was trying to write a little list there, but you lot were so short, I'm not going to be able to do it. I just want to finish off as an end of season review with our review of All for United. It's been a crazy year. This was never something that I, as a Man United fan, expected to be doing. And at no point when I got involved in All for United was I expecting to be effectively running a channel like this on the men's side. It wasn't where I was expecting myself to go. But we've ended up there. And the only reason that this has worked and it has become a community that I really enjoy being a part of is because of the amount of people that we've had supporting us over the course of the last 12 months. And I just want to try, and I'll probably forget people. If I do, I really apologize for that. But I want to put a massive shout out. And I know we've done this a little bit over the time. But first of all, to Connor, obviously owns the channel. He took the chance and we've spoken to him many times. Connor and I get on really, really well. It's a really helpful thing, and the trust that we have for each other is incredibly helpful for this. And as a result, he's given us free reign, and within that, that's why you're seeing what you're seeing now. It may be what you prefer for a channel. It may not be what you prefer for a channel, but it is what it is. And until somebody kicks me out, that's what it's going to be. So hopefully it'll grow and you'll all love it. But if not, I'm sorry. It's the way the world goes. I've got to say a massive thank you to Dan, this guy just here, because he's stuck with us all the way through it. He's been there to talk about how we're going to set it up, the things that we're trying to do. He's worked with us, supported us with all of those, and it's brilliant. The reason we have the two co-host idea is because it's great, and it means that if we have one of us not here, there's always going to be one that can run it. So that's the best way. But we're hoping that as we move on into next year, we'll be able to change that a little bit, perhaps if need be, so that we can have some separate shows and one of us gets a night off and that sort of thing would be nice. That's the plan. It's not always meant to be just us two. We'd like more people. And if you're one of those people that likes to contribute, please let us know. I want to say a massive thank you to James. He's a guy that you never see on this channel. He's around on Twitter somewhere if you search for him. But he's literally like Scarlet Pimpernel. Hard to find, hard to pin down. But this channel would be very little without people like James. He's the guy who we can to message at any point in the day and say, we'd like a thumbnail and it's got this, this and that. All of the thumbnails that you see, with the exception of about two, you'll probably be able to tell which two were the ones done by me, are done by him. And he spends a lot of time doing them. To be fair though, the manager one, Dan, I thought was quite good. I did enjoy that one. So I'll put that up at his level because I did quite, even Connor went, that's really nice. So it must have been quite good. But big thank you to James for everything he does with the thumbnails. To the contributors, there's been so many of you. Matt, who's helping out now with the Twitter and is helping us to really push that. We're nearly at 1,000 followers on Twitter. It'd be brilliant to finally get across that barrier. It's taken a while. We used to have 17,000 on the old account. Then it went because obviously Ben took it away with him. We're in a situation where we want to get that built up again. And we feel like we've got a product that we're really pushing out to you. It's never about commercial gain. We're not here for the money. We're not here for any of that sort of thing. We are here because we just enjoy talking about Man United, and we hope that comes across. So big thanks to Matt. We're really looking forward to seeing what he can do. Beanie over on TikTok, he's helping us to push out some information out there and to, again, just try and drive some of that traffic. So a big thank you to you two guys, to Andrew Wall and John Neville, our resident season ticket holders, who come in and give us that vital information about what it's like inside the ground, because, you know, it's the hottest ticket in town. And if you can have people that have actually been there and know what it's like inside, brilliant, absolutely superb. So superb to have them. And for all of the people that have been there, people like Stu Woolley all the way from the beginning, people that have come on, maybe only had 2, 3, 4, 5 appearances, people like Bainesy, people like Jarvis, people like Vicky, all of the people that we've had that have come on over the course of this year. Big thank you to all. You're all absolute legends, and we really appreciate having you on the show. And of course, the last thank you in this incredibly long and convoluted list of thank yous is to you guys that watch. We've taken this from a place that didn't have as many watchers. We'd sit there and go, oh, it'd be nice if we could get above 10 watching at any one time. The views are going up. It's all thanks to you lot for coming to watch us. And for as long as you want to come and watch us, we will make that promise that unless Mason Greenwood plays for the football club, we will be here. And we will be here at least twice a week, if we can be, to make sure that you have got a place to put your views and your opinions across. We call it All for United Be Heard. We hope that you are. Whatever it is that you're saying, we may not agree with it, but you've got the right to say it. And here, as long as it's put across the right way, you'll always have that opportunity. So thank you. Much appreciated. It's been a cracking season. Loads to come over the close season. There'll be a little bit to do with the Euros as well. We're going to have a little preview show on that next Wednesday. So this time next week. That's what we're looking for. You guys are all legends. We appreciate your time. Thank you very much. It's been a slightly longer show than we expected it to be, but there you go. That's life. And thank you for everything. We look forward to seeing you for another quiz where I'm sure I'm going to get absolutely roasted. So got to be worth watching it just for that, hasn't it? Take care, everyone. See you next time.